Hola, hola! Welcome to the podcast Pasos de Esperanza, the podcast where we take steps of hope to win the race against cancer. Today we have a super special guest, Victoria Ordóñez. Victoria, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Well, to give you a little bit of context, when me and my mom first came to Houston, I started my treatment in Guatemala, but basically they said that I had to come to Houston because I needed to finish my treatment here. And when we first got here, we didn't know anyone. We got to the hospital. We were so lost. We didn't even know what to do or anything. But thank God my dad was friends with his dad. And wow, like we met her family. They gave us food and like shampoo. We had nothing, but they were like our guardian angels when we first got here. And that's when I met Victoria, and I saw that she was also in treatment, and she was such an inspiration to me because she was almost done and I was just starting. So that's kind of how we met. So yeah, Victoria, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
To start the podcast, would you want to tell me a little bit about your story when you first got diagnosed?
I got diagnosed when I was 18. I had just graduated high school, which for context, like she mentioned, or I don't know if you mentioned, I went to high school in Colombia, in Barranquilla, Colombia, specifically. But like my cancer story starts maybe like January before. So I kind of noticed that I had like a little lump on like the upper inside part of my thigh. And I was like, well, this is odd, but it didn't hurt. It didn't bother me in any way, shape, or form. So I was just like, whatever. And then my cousin's wife is a pediatrician. She's a doctor. And so I just went up to her one day. We were both at my grandparents' house. And I was like, hey, what's
Check this out. Yeah.
She was like, oh, well, I mean, just like looking at it, I would think it's a lipoma. But, get it checked out. Like, this isn't an official consult. Like, this is just like... So I don't blame her in any way, shape, or form. That was, again, like February, but I was really busy with like senior year and like everything. And so I just kind of like, since it didn't bother me, it just went to the back of my mind until I graduated high school. And then I was like, well, I'm done now.
I don't really want a lump in my head.
Yeah, I don't want a lump on my leg. I kind of want to get it removed before I go to college. Then I told my mom that, and so we went to a plastic surgeon first. And the plastic surgeon was like, I'm not really comfortable operating on this, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't look like a normal lipoma. Maybe, like, go to someone else, like, get a second opinion, and then, like, if they're fine with it, come back and I'll do surgery. The second opinion was like, maybe get another opinion. And so, like, 5 doctors later, they were like, yeah, you have cancer. And I was like, great.
I don't know if I would call it great, but...
This is actually, I think before they were officially like, yeah, you have cancer, I kind of already know.
You already knew?
Like, if you're going to like 8 different doctors back to back to back, everyone's kind of like, this is weird, whatever. Like,
yeah.
Even if it wasn't cancer, it's not going to be good.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I like Googled it too. I knew a few days before they told me, but I like kept quiet. I was like, there's no way.
No, because like whenever, what was it? Like whenever we actually got the biopsy results back.
Yeah. And
they were like, yeah, it's cancer. I was like, okay. I had like genuinely no reaction at first because I was like, I kind of already know.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? Oh, right. Diagnosis, June. Right, let's say kind of June. I got the surgery like 2 weeks after my diagnosis, got it removed. It was kind of a big surgery looking back at it because the tumor was around 10 centimeters, but it was like 2 millimeters away from my femoral artery.
That's crazy.
Which is like looking, I don't know, like in that moment I was like, it's a surgery, whatever.
It is what it is.
But now it's like, I genuinely could have lost my leg, but it's fine. I have 2 legs. But then, yeah, I got the surgery. Everything went well. And then my dad just like Googled best cancer hospital. And they were like, okay, we're going there. We're going to MD Anderson. That's how we ended up in Houston. And then I got radiation and chemotherapy. So I got like 3 months of radiation, I think. And then I got like 4 rounds of chemo. I believe. Yeah. Which, like, for those that don't know, a round of chemo is, it's 21 days. So, like, the first 7 days is, like, you get the the drug, whatever it is drug you're getting. And then the next 2 weeks, it is just like recovery, and like you're being monitored to make sure that, you're not.
You're healing. And, like, it's working.
But yeah, that was, I think, yeah.
Wow. And now you're cancer free, right?
Yes. So I've been cancer free since April 2020.
Woo. That's amazing. Even though our stories are like so different and we had different cancers, I think we went through like a similar experience, because I got diagnosed in Guatemala and like I had my whole life there, as same as you did in Colombia. Like you had your whole family, your friends and everything. How was that transition from like coming from Colombia, getting here to Houston? It's like a 360 of your life, especially because like, I don't know if you knew that you were staying here your whole life or you were going to go back. I definitely did not think it was going to be 3 years and now living here. How was that like transition for you?
So it was, and we were talking about this earlier, like before we started filming, but we used to like come to the States as like summer or something. Or,
Yeah,
like,
it was
winter break.
vacations.
And so it was.
Yeah.
And then for it to just go from being like, oh yeah, you have fun, we have 2 weeks off of school, to like, oh, we're getting cancer treatment. It was a bit of a shock, not a shock. It was just a change, a big change. But for me, the getting used to like moving here from Colombia, it did come a bit of as a shock, because when we first came to Anderson, or when I left Colombia, I left under the impression that I was just going to get radiation. And so like, we had clothes for like, what, 2-3 months? Well, it's still a long time, but like, we had like summer clothes. We didn't plan to stay like all the way through to the winter. And then like I got here, and my oncologist, she was like, yeah, you're actually gonna get chemo as well. Your tumor was big enough for like, you need to get chemo. You should get chemo. And so, yeah, then we just ended up staying for way longer, and then COVID happened. So we couldn't even leave immediately after my treatment. So it was kind of just forced.
Yeah.
But also it was like, I needed to get used to it as it was happening. Like I had no time to be like, okay, this is my life now. This is going to be my life. It was just like, you either get used to it or like,
You have to. Yeah, no,
there's no other alternative.
Yeah, when me and my mom came, like we definitely, I swear my mom thought I was going to live in hospital clothes or something, because she brought her own mini luggage just for her with her clothes. And yeah, no, it was like definitely an adjustment from like, we thought we were going to live from a mini suitcase to then like moving all our stuff from Guatemala to Houston. That was crazy. Also, like, even though our stories are different, we got diagnosed at an age where it's like not common at all. Like we were teenagers, we were in the midst of like having fun your senior year. I was going into my senior year, you were a senior, which is like known as like, yay, best year.
Yeah.
You're going to college after. How did you deal with like being in the hospital, but yet seeing all your friends and like all your family and everything? Like, how did you deal with like the FOMO, like, the fear of missing out, or like with like being like, okay, this is where I am and I'm okay with it? How did you keep like that positive mindset, even though it was everyone else was doing something else?
I probably did not have a positive mindset. Looking back at it, I'm gonna be so honest, I probably didn't. But it was definitely very hard, because even when I was first gonna come to Houston, like you said, the parties and stuff, and like senior year, everyone's moving on with their life, like starting their lives, and I was like not. So it was very hard in that way, where it was like I'm stuck, and yeah, everyone has their own path in life, and like not everyone does things at the same time, on the same timeline. But the thing that was like even harder for me, more than missing out, was like not even the cancer itself, but the treatment. Because when I was in high school, not like closer to when I graduated, but like more like before, like junior year, start of senior year, I had a little bit of a battle with anorexia. And so whether I wanted to or not, I got a lot of my validation from how I looked. So I would go to the gym a lot. When people would meet me, the first thing they'd say is like, oh my God, your hair is beautiful. I love your hair. It's so long. Your eyelashes, your eyebrows, blah, blah, blah. And so like subconsciously I was like, okay, that's what matters. Like I'm pretty.
That's
like,
how I validate myself.
Yeah, that's how I validate myself. That's where I got my self-worth from in a way.
Yeah.
And then I started the chemo and I lose all of it. Like
No hair, no eyebrows,
no eyelashes. And not even that, but it was like I went from, and I'm sure you can realize, you were an athlete.
Yeah.
Like I went from like being able to work out like 5 times a week to then like my legs would shake when like I like tried to like sit down or stand up or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it was just a lot. And if someone were to ask me, oh, how'd you do it? Like, how'd you get out of that? Like, it was just time. Like, I just needed to like relearn who I was and like who I wanted to be afterwards, kind of like to kind of find out, who I am in a way.
I think you touched like such an important subject, which is like when you like start cancer, I feel like you're finding your validation like somewhere else. Like for me, it was like being an athlete. Like everyone was like, oh, like that's the runner girl. Like the same way, like, oh, that's the pretty girl. And like we're getting our validation from somewhere specific. But then you go through treatment and it's like, wow, like, okay, I can't train, I can't run. And it's so hard. Like I remember like I would try to like squat and I would fall, or I would try to like jump and it was like, oh, no jumping for me. I remember once one of my friends came to visit and we were like, oh, let's take a picture, and like we jumped and I completely fell on the floor.
Oh my
like
God.
It was like, oh, like reality check, like I can't be doing those things. So it's like so important, because I feel like even though it's like a hard and long treatment, we really get to like relearn who we are, who we want to be, and like where we're getting our validation from, you know, because like it's not from your looks and it's not from being an athlete, or it's not from anything else, you know, because I think that's crazy.
And like it's always something that you hear, like it's, like you're more than your hobbies or whatever, but I guess like until we were put in that situation where it was,
your
like,
hobbies are literally taken away.
Yes, or like your just form of validation or expression or whatever. We're kind of forced to, but in a way it's like I'm glad that I don't get my validation from my looks anymore.
No, me too. It was like, even though it's like such a traumatic experience and like something that's completely hard, I feel blessed that I went through it, because like I grew as a person in so many areas of my life. But now you are like, you know who you are and like what you want to do, kinda. You're starting.
I know what I want to do.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that and like college, and now that you're cancer free.
Speaking of, I never said what type of cancer I had. I had a sarcoma, simplified version. Complicated version, it is a myxoid liposarcoma, but basically just a sarcoma. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. What was the question? It was what am I, college?
You took like a traumatic experience, and I know now you want to be a doctor and you're trying to go into oncology, which I think is crazy, but you're taking something that happened to you and you're using it to your power. So do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
So I go to UAB, which is University of Alabama at Birmingham. And when I started, I mean, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. Since I'm like 12, 13, I always knew. But for me, undergrad, which is, also for those of you that don't know, in the US, you need to have a bachelor's degree before you can apply to go to med school. And so that is what I'm doing right now. I'm in the senior year, the last year of my bachelor's degree. And so when I started, I was doing biomedical engineering, and it was just kind of a stepping stone to get to medical school. Like I enjoyed it. It was fun to learn about, but it wasn't.
You're not like, this is what I want to do with my life.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people, when I would tell them like, oh, I'm doing BME as like pre-med, they'd be like, oh, that's great. And like, if you don't get into med school, like you can just do that. And I'd be like,
no.
there's not a no.
Yeah.
And so I kind of started like looking into like more other majors the university had and stuff like that. And then I found one called cancer biology, which is literally like, it is the only university that has that as an undergrad major, like in the US, which I think is crazy. And I ended up going to that college.
Yeah.
And it is like just learning about cancer, learning about a lot of the main genes involved, learning about like different pathways. And it is genuinely just like so interesting to me. And it is something that interested me even like when I first got diagnosed. They'd tell me what cancer I had, and I'd be like looking up every single word. they told me what drugs I was going to be on. I'd be like looking it up. Like it was just genuinely like interesting to me, like learning about everything that was going on, like more from a sciencey perspective.
Yeah.
And then now that I get to learn about it, I guess also from a sciencey perspective, but more like in a professional setting, it's just amazing. And then I will hopefully be going to med school next year. And I just think it's great. I don't know. I get to turn a very negative experience for me into something positive for somebody else in the future if everything works out.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Like turning a negative experience, which was our treatment, which was long and hard, but now you're becoming a doctor and using it to help others, which I think is amazing. And it's so inspiring. It's so inspiring to me see how you're taking your experience and using it to help others. Wow. Okay, to kind of end the episode, do you want to give any advice, if you could give any advice to someone our age or any age that is currently like going through cancer treatment, what advice would you give?
I would give 2. So 1, find a hobby that like is doable, because I mean for you, like your hobby was like running, but you know that obviously
was not doable
anymore.
Was not doable.
But for me, like it turned into making puzzles, because I mean even before COVID I could not leave my house. Like a simple cold would like kill me. I mean obviously like you also know,
I
like,
came in
all
with
of our
COVID, so no going out,
no
nothing.
And so I really liked puzzles. And so we would have a bunch of puzzles. I would finish a puzzle and my parents would go out and buy me a new one, and it would just be so fun. And it is something that like helped me pass the time in like a just help pass the time in a way.
No, I agree. For me it's kind of embarrassing, but it's a little embarrassing. But my mom would like make me walk or like do some sort of exercise for at least like 20 minutes during my treatment. And I remember as soon as I could, I got a Nintendo Switch, and that was my hobby. Like I was literally addicted to like Just Dance, and I would literally dance as much as I could as like my exercise of the day or whatever it was. And no, it's like a hobby, like playing Mario Kart, whatever it was. It's just like, it gives you like, it takes you away from the situation you're at and like lets you, you know, like put your mind in something else. So I think that advice is so important.
And then the second advice was look what other resources your hospital has. Like obviously they're probably just like bombarding you with like, oh, we have this and blah blah blah. But they actually do want you to get better. And as in like I adore my care team and like my doctors and my nurses. Those are the only ones that I really used. And I wish I would have like reached out to other things that MD Anderson had in particular. Because I know that there are a lot, even like the smallest ones that you might think of. And also cancer survivor scholarships. Those are really good too. But
I mean, yeah, no, that's actually great advice. I think like when you're in cancer treatment, you like kind of close off yourself sometimes, and you're like, I don't need help. I don't want to do anything. Sure. But try to make sure that you're using all the resources available to you. I know I had my best time when like, I don't know, like the kid supporters would come in and like take me to play Guitar Hero, whatever it was that like would take my mind off. So I think your advice is so valuable. And I think, wow, that's amazing. Your story is so inspiring. So if you're currently going through cancer, just know that you're not alone. And like Victoria said, try to look for the people that surround you, your resources, and make sure you're using them day by day. And thank you so much for coming here and telling your story. So inspiring. And we'll see you guys in the next episode of Pasos de Esperanza.